Hello, everyone, and welcome to At Barrons. I'm Andy Serwer, and welcome to our guest, Allan Thygesen, who is the CEO of DocSign. Allan, great to see you.
Thanks for having me, Andy.
So everyone knows DocuSign's documents, they get them, but how does the business model work?
Yeah, so companies of all sizes, from two-person law firms or real estate offices to the very largest companies, license our software. And the way they do that is they basically pre-buy a certain number of documents that they can send out. And then if they need more, they can up the capacity. That's the basic business model, and it's worked pretty well.
So that's a subscription model
Yep.
essentially, and you're paying a monthly or a yearly fee?
You pay. It's usually annual, but and that is sized by how much capacity you need.
Right. And global, how many customers do you have?
We're very global. You can buy DocSign in over 180 countries in the world. We have about 1.7 million entities that pay us monthly. So these are businesses, nonprofits, and government organizations, which is, just for reference, that's a very large number for an enterprise software company. Many enterprise software companies just sell to a few thousand. But because we sell to companies of all sizes, we end up with a very large number of customers. And we're about $3 billion in revenue, publicly listed.
Right. And tell us about your competitive set. For instance, is Adobe a competitor or a frenemy, or how does that work?
Well, we like to think as a friend, but look, there are other. DocuSign is probably the best known company in signature. We're the market leader with a choice of most of the leading companies in the world. 95% of the Fortune 500 use DocuSign, and of course many small companies. But there are companies that offer, let's say, less full-featured signature solutions, both in the enterprise context or to small businesses. But I think most people regard DocuSign as the gold standard for signing documents.
Yeah, I mean, people use that word for the documents that you get, and most of the time they in fact are DocuSign. Mm-hmm. Do you call them documents?
We call them documents or contracts.
Right.
Yeah.
And so tell us about the origin story of DocuSign. They were founded in Seattle, I think you said, but you guys are based in the Bay Area now?
Yeah, so we were the three founders a little over 20 years ago. And at that time, our Congress had actually voted and approved a law authorizing e-signature for a variety of use cases. And so the founders thought that was a great opportunity to deliver a solution that would help companies and consumers with that. But it was a tall climb early on. Companies didn't think that was safe, or wondering whether it was legal. Consumers had those same trust issues. And so it was a long, slow build, I'd say, for the first decade. But the founders and the team really persevered and ultimately ended up delivering a solution that became very ubiquitous. Most people probably encountered us first in a real estate transaction or a financial services transaction. But now DocuSign is used practically for every form of agreement: employment agreements, sales agreements, procurement agreements, licensing agreements. Anywhere there's agreements, and there's agreements in pretty much every workflow in every company, you can use DocuSign to execute them. And so we've an incredibly broad base of customers across all industries and across all sizes.
Yeah, I mean, I think I am seeing them more and more. There's still room for you guys to grow, though, right? I mean, is there a lot of stuff in government, for instance, still? Can you use them for the IRS?
You cannot sign your tax return with DocuSign yet.
You're working on that?
That'd be great. Yeah, well, I mean, I think we would love to do that, but we don't have anything in the offing for that. But we do support a variety of both federal and state and local government workflows. So in many states, you go to the DMV, any of the documents, you can download them and execute them in DocuSign. And of course, we support a variety of federal workflows for procurement, for employment, for licensing, and so on.
Right. Now, some people might think of your company as a one-product company, but I bet you don't think of it that way, particularly as you look forward, right?
We do not. But look, it's not unfair to say that we are so identified with our product category that that can be a strength and a curse, that everybody associates you with that. As a result, we've built a tremendous amount of trust. So over the years, we've extended to moments in the journey. If you think about an agreement, it goes through a journey, right? You draft it, you negotiate it, then you execute it, and then you manage it once executed. And we have, over time, added pieces of all those workflows. So if you want to sell out mass customized agreements, we can do that. If you want to verify the identity of people who you are sending documents to, you can do that. But we never really put the whole thing together, and we never put it on modern plumbing. And so that's what I've been working on. I joined 2.5 years ago. We announced our new platform we call Intelligent Agreement Management last year, where we started showing all the building blocks for this. And now we're releasing sort of the full suite with modern AI built in. So it's a very exciting time for the company. We're really poised to transform how agreements get done. And there's been outside of that signature moment, it's been very little innovation how agreements get done.
Can you drill down, Alan, a little bit more there in practical terms? Give us an example. Say you're a law firm negotiating a deal with a mining company or something like that, and then how would you go from the entire journey that you described?
Well, so let's imagine that this is an agreement type that you've done previously. We help you create templates of various forms of agreements. You can then customize it on the fly, maybe pulling in data from your other systems. That creates a tailored agreement that then goes to the other party. You can go back and forth, and when you see their edits, you can have the AI review whether you approve or disagree with their comments. Get a resulting document, then that document can get pushed. We can verify the identity of the parties involved. Then you sign electronically, of course, with DocuSign. And then the agreement goes to our intelligent repository, where now we can give you AI-assisted intelligence about everything that's in those agreements. So let's say you're a firm that deals with mining companies. You might want to know, when is my agreement up for renewal? What would I want to renegotiate next time around? What are things I want to keep an eye on? All those things we can extract out of the agreements and present them to you. You can have them tabular, you can have them search. We can give a different view for the financial people and the sales people and the procurement people. And so it provides a level of visibility and insight into agreements that's previously been unavailable. Today, agreements go to a deep, dark place. A filing cabinet or the digital equivalent of it.
Yeah, I mean, so just a first side question there. Traditionally, when I sign a DocuSign, it's kept with the company that I sign it with?
Correct.
Right, and not you, the third party, but...
Well, so you as a signer also keep a copy.
Right.
And we don't charge for that. Consumers just have access. So if you have signed agreements with DocSign in the past, you can log in at any time and see the DocuSigns that you've signed in the past. But if you're the company that sent them out, then it would historically go into an unstructured file system, and you would have no insight. It would basically be a PDF. It would be a picture.
Right.
You would have no insight into what's the actual data in the agreement. And we are finally using AI to unlock that data and put it to work for your business.
And how are you integrating AI in terms of which AI company are you partnering with? Are you developing it internally? What's going on there?
Yeah, so we work with multiple companies. So we develop our own AI models, but we also work with OpenAI and Microsoft, so running the GPT on Azure, and we'll announce some other partnerships we're working on in the future. So we want to use the best available models for every use case to make sure our customers get maximum insight.
Right, and so how is this rollout going? Is this product live now, and how are sales?
It's been very gratifying. So we announced it last year, and it is the fastest growing product in our company's history. I announced at our customer event that we have over 10,000 customers live with the product already, which is just an exceptional ramp for a new software product. And we keep building new functionality. So this spring here we're announcing a whole suite of new functionality, including a contract agent. So think of it using AI to automate the end-to-end agreement workflow. Everything. Let's imagine your job is to review contracts with all your vendors. We can automate every step in that process, checking the vendor, whether something has changed with them, checking the contract, whether it complies with what your templates are now, automating the communication with the vendor. Every one of those steps that you normally would have been a separate workflow and step for a contract person or a procurement person can now be fully automated using an agent.
But and I know that you still need human oversight there. And
absolutely.
then the question is, sometimes I talk to people with AI systems and they're like, oh, there's more human oversight required than I thought. And so how are humans integrated into that process you're describing?
Well, so every step of that process, you can click in to see the details. There's human approval, whatever the company wants. That'll be a risk-adjusted thing. Maybe if you're negotiating an NDA, you'd let the system just run it because there's a standard set of rules. You're just looking for that. But if it's a complicated, high-value agreement, there'd be both a review on the front end and maybe multiple reviews during the negotiation process. So it's really tailored. The system is flexible enough to let you use as much or as little automation as you want. But for a lot of agreement processes, high-volume agreement processes, you want to use automation. And so we offer you a choice.
I want to go back a little bit in time, right before you became CEO, the pandemic. I mean, you were a pandemic stock, right? DocuSign, it went up to what, 310, I think, or something like that. You're in the 70s now. So the stock has come way down, but that was because everyone said, oh my gosh, we have to stay at home and we can only use DocuSign to do business, so buy the stock. How did you, when you came in and you're coming down off that roller coaster, how did you manage that?
Yeah, so I joined when a lot of that denouement had happened. But I think to be fair to everyone, when you go through that cycle, a lot of that is outside of your control. There was a tremendous pull forward of demand, and then as COVID receded, some special use cases went away. A lot of companies had overbought licenses, and so there was just a natural cycle there. But of course, that's very disruptive inside the company. And so when I arrived, we needed to rationalize our expense structure. We needed to stabilize our core sign business. I think we've pretty much done that, and Wall Street gives us a lot of credit for that. And then we needed to articulate what's going to be next, what goes beyond the signing moment. And that's where we got to intelligent agreement management. We first, I think, conceived of it in the summer of 23. We started building, started iterating with the first customers in early 24. And then we announced the platform in April, started shipping with customers in June, and here we are 9-10 months later, and it's been a fantastic introduction, and now we're just building it out so that we can support every customer category in every geography across every function, because we are really a horizontal agreement platform, the first of its kind. So.
You mentioned Wall Street, and I'm curious as to what they look for when you're talking to them. What are the questions they ask? What are the metrics they look to at DocuSign?
Well, I think early on, what they wanted to see was, could we stabilize the core? Because without that, nothing mattered. So I think we really demonstrated that, and there's a nice uptick there. They wanted to see that we could become a lot more profitable. Everyone's expectations of profitability went up, and we've improved our operating margin by 10 percentage points in the last 2 years. And then, of course, they wanted to see how are you going to rekindle growth beyond the stabilization. And so that was the articulation last year, and I think everybody's very encouraged to see the signs that we have great product market fit for this much broader value proposition we have now.
The company has a PE on trailing 12-month earnings of 15. That seems pretty low given other software companies. Why is that?
Well, I think Wall Street is still waiting to see if we can really rekindle growth at the level that we hope. I said in my first earnings call that I didn't join to run a single-digit growth company, and that remains true, and I think we're on a good trajectory. So we'll get there at some point, and it's I think we've already seen quite a bit of recognition from the street that it's a much more exciting story from a stability, earnings, and growth potential perspective.
You worked at Google for, what, a decade plus. Right. What did you take away from there that applies to a smaller enterprise software company, and what doesn't fit at all?
What did I leave behind?
Yeah.
So I think what I took away, and this may be a little surprising, but at Google in the ads business, which is the core business at Google, every customer of any size, doesn't matter if you're spending $100 a month or $100 million a month, you place your own orders in the system. Everything's self-serve. Obviously, you talk to people in sales and product about it, but at the end of the day, you place your own orders. At DocuSign, on the other hand, we insisted on you talking to DocuSign sellers about every order that you placed. And so we had a pretty modest commerce capability. So that's an example of something where I felt we could make huge improvements, and we have in fact done that, and our digital business is growing the fastest of any of our channels. Things to leave behind? Well, I think that Google is a very large company, famously matrixed. Decisions can be a little slow, and so I really wanted to get our agility and entrepreneurial spirit back. And I feel we've made tremendous progress there. There's always room for improvement. And we are a business of some size and scale, so you can't operate like a pure startup. But getting that energy and pace of product innovation and introduction back, and that's really what we're talking about at our big customer conference. And I think there's some proofs in the pudding there.
There's a lot of talk about Washington and policies coming out from there impacting businesses, different businesses in different ways. What does that mean for DocuSign? Is there anything going on there in terms of tariffs or just tax policy, anything of that nature?
Yeah, I mean, we have a very diversified customer base across all industries, so we're not as exposed to individual industries that might, suffer more in the case of short-term swings in trade. And to the extent that trade shifts between countries, that also doesn't have a huge impact on us. Obviously, if global trade really compresses, that wouldn't be great for the big companies that work with us that import or export a lot. We haven't seen any evidence yet, but that could happen. It could also, the uncertainty could impact the investment climate, and we're an investment for companies, and so we'll just have to see. But we're hopeful. I think, as all Americans should be, that the U.S. economy can continue to perform strongly.
Right. So that's interesting. You're not seeing any impact of any slowdown vis-a-vis your customers or sales at this point?
Not so far, but
right.
You never want to.
Still early in the year.
Still early in the year.
Tell us a little bit, Allan, about your personal story. You came from Denmark and went to Stanford.
I did.
What was that like?
I visited the U.S. several times and loved it, and always sort of dreamt of maybe coming back to California. And so when I got the idea of applying to business school, I applied, and Stanford was my number one choice, and I was very fortunate to get in. And California is, despite what some people might hear or read in the press, it's still an amazing place to live in every way. Met my wife in graduate school. We decided to settle in the Bay Area. I went to work in tech, and I've worked in tech my entire career. Now I have 4 grown kids, and they love the Bay Area, and so we're settled there for good. Coming to Stanford from Denmark, I think relative to other foreign visitors, it was perhaps less of a transition. There are certainly differences between Denmark and the U.S., but I felt very comfortable very quickly. People were joking that I was practically an American. So.
Right. And I know you're on the board of Maersk, correct? Speaking of global trade, which we're talking about. How's that going? How's business there, and what's that experience like? Is there anything that sort of pertains, that translates over to your company, DocuSign?
Well, so Maersk, most people probably know, is one of the leading global shipping companies, and so their core business is to operate these large container ships on behalf of anybody who moves goods across oceans. The current environment obviously is challenging because there's so much uncertainty about the tariffs, and I think that you've already seen some slowdown in the movement of goods, and I think it's very uncertain what's going to happen in the long term to global trade volumes, given what's happening. In terms of its relevance for DocuSign, Maersk is certainly more exposed to global trade patterns than we are. And in terms of business, shipping is a very heavily paper-based industry, and there's a tremendous amount of paperwork. And so they're a perfect example of a company that would be a good beneficiary of better agreement processes.
Yeah, maybe they can give you a ring. And final question, Allan, and this speaks to shareholders who either own the stock right now or maybe people out there who are considering buying it. Why should they buy the stock or hold the stock, DocuSign stock, now?
I think DocuSign is we have an incredible starting position, being very widely adopted and trusted. Newsweek just voted us the most trusted software and telecommunications company in America for the 2nd year in a row. So I think that gives us a good starting position, and we've now articulated a much broader vision that takes advantage of modern AI. It really is one of the top, I think, use cases and an area of productivity inside of companies that's seen remarkably little innovation. So we have the benefit of being trusted, well-positioned, having established distribution, we have a vision that I think opens up addressing a very large pain point. We worked with Deloitte, and they estimated that over $2 trillion are lost globally every year to inefficient agreement practices and systems. So that's a meaty problem to attack. We're, I think, the best position to do it, and I think we're delivering, and there's some good early evidence that customers are adopting. So I think it's a good story.
Allan Thygesen, CEO of DocSign, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you, Andy.
This is at Barrons. I'm Andy Serwer. We'll catch you next time.